At first I thought, who is this? Then he looked familiar, said Cashier Sophie, excitedly telling the other employees gathered around her. No one could have predicted how an ordinary Thursday at the Nafa Naana supermarket in Burkina Faso's capital would turn into a historic moment. Ibrahim Traoré, the country's powerful leader, had left the palace and come alone to this ordinary supermarket 10 kilometers away. His shopping basket contained basic groceries, a bottle of water, and pharmacy items. "How would you like to pay?" asked Sophie, her heart beating rapidly. "Cash," said Traoré, taking out his wallet. Noticing how carefully he examined the prices and found some items very expensive, Sophie commented, "Everything has become so expensive, hasn't it? Salaries aren't enough." At that moment, Traoré took out his notebook and said, "Can you tell me exactly which products have increased in price the most? We need to fix this." Today, like many of you, I was humiliated by having my identity questioned. The Nafa Naana supermarket in the eastern district of Ouagadougou was an ordinary place where middle-class families typically shopped. That morning, as the sun was just rising, the market employees had begun their daily routines. Sophie Kabor, the 24-year-old cashier, had been working there for 5 years. Every day she saw dozens of faces and processed thousands of items through her register. Today seemed no different from any other day, at least that's what she thought. Around 10:30, a tall man dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt entered the market. He had no security detail and did nothing to draw attention. Like a normal customer, he took a basket and began browsing the aisles. He went first to the basic food items section: rice, beans, flour, sugar. The supermarket manager, Marcel Ouedraogo, didn't even notice this ordinary customer when he came out of his office. As he went about his daily routine, he didn't see the man carefully examining the prices of some products, even taking notes. Cashier Sophie took a short break after handling a long line of customers. On her way to the break room, she made eye contact with one of the customers. The man's face looked familiar, but she couldn't place it. She walked past and continued with her work. 2 hours later, that familiar-faced man came to her checkout. In his basket were basic food items, hygiene products, a bottle of water, and some medicines from the pharmacy section. About 15 items in total. "Good day," the customer said politely. "Good day, sir," Sophie responded automatically. She began scanning the items one by one. But something about this customer bothered her. Where had she seen this face? "Do we really pay 5,000 CFA for this powdered milk?" asked the customer, looking at the price in astonishment. "Yes, sir," said Sophie. "It was 3,800 CFA last month, but it went up again." Under Traoré's leadership, the country began to take a stronger stance against foreign influences. How do people manage with prices like these? The man muttered, almost to himself. As Sophie continued scanning the items, she confided, "Everything has become so expensive, hasn't it? Salaries aren't enough." She wouldn't normally be so candid with customers, but there was something trustworthy about this man. At that moment, the customer pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "Can you tell me exactly which products have increased in price the most? We need to fix this. Shall we go in?" Sophie paused. "We?" she said. Then suddenly everything fell into place. This ordinary-looking customer. This voice. This posture. You're President Traoré?" she whispered, her eyes wide open. Ibrahim Traoré smiled slightly. "Yes, I just wanted to do some shopping and see what our citizens encounter in their daily lives." Mixed exhibitions were organized, and local artists were given space. The barcode scanner fell from Sophie's hand. She was trembling. "Oh my God. I didn't know. I'm so sorry," shouted French President Pierre Laurent, calling his advisors to an emergency meeting. "Don't apologize," said Traoré, still smiling. "Thank you for treating me like a normal citizen. This helps me see the reality." His shopping basket contained basic groceries, a bottle of water, and pharmacy items. Sophie reached for the phone, but Traoré gently stopped her. "Please, let's continue quietly. I just want to be among my people." Noticing how carefully he examined the prices and found some items very expensive, Sophie commented, "Everything has become so expensive, hasn't it?" But it was too late. The cashier next to Sophie had noticed what was happening, her eyes wide open. A wave of whispers spread through the market. "The president is here. President Traoré is in our market." That morning, as the sun was just rising, the market employees had begun their daily routines. Within minutes, a crowd began to form outside the Nafa Naana supermarket. Customers inside took out their phones, some taking photos, others starting live broadcasts. Market manager Marcel Ouedraogo came running, shock and disbelief on his face. "Mr. President, why didn't you notify us? We could have prepared." Like a normal customer, He took a basket and began browsing the aisles. Traoré shook his head. That's exactly why I didn't give notice. I wanted to see the real situation, not a prepared visit. Cashier Sophie took a short break after handling a long line of customers. Meanwhile, Sophie was still at the checkout, stunned. President Traoré turned to her. Now, as you were saying, which products have increased in price the most? And what do you think is the reason? In his basket were basic food items, hygiene products, a bottle of water, and some medicines from the pharmacy section. Sophie composed herself and began explaining. Especially powdered milk, rice, oil, and sugar. But mothers are the most affected. Baby formula prices have nearly doubled. I don't know the exact reason, but people say import taxes have increased. Where had she seen this face? Another cashier, Fatou, gathered her courage and approached. Mr. President, I'm a mother of 2. Before, I could buy food with 40% of my weekly salary. Now, almost my entire salary isn't enough. Some nights my children go to bed hungry. How do people manage with prices like these? Traoré's expression hardened. He quickly wrote in his notebook. What else? She wouldn't normally be so candid with customers, but there was something trustworthy about this man. The market employees and customers gathered around grew bolder. An elderly man stepped forward. Mr. President, I'm retired. My pension doesn't even cover my medications anymore. The pharmacies raise prices every week. Traoré continued taking notes. How are our people coping with this situation? This ordinary-looking customer, a young mother with a baby in her arms, approached. We borrow, Mr. President. From neighbors, family, banks. Everyone is in debt. And some of us can't provide enough food for our children. Ibrahim Traoré smiled slightly. Traoré carefully noted everything. Meanwhile, the crowd outside the market doors continued to grow. People were calling to each other, contacting their friends and family. The president is here. The president is among his people. Market employees tried to control the situation, but the wave of excitement had become unmanageable. Traoré completed his purchase at Sophie's checkout and paid in cash. Mr. President, said Marcel Ouedraogo, we can arrange a secure exit for you through the back door. Ahmed became one of Traoré's most trusted guards after that day. Traoré shook his head again. No, I don't run from my people. I want to talk to them. I won't forget either, Ahmed. Taking his shopping bag, he headed for the market exit. When the doors opened, hundreds of people greeted him with applause. Phones were raised in the air, with shouts of "Long live Traoré!" rising from the crowd. Traoré raised his hand to greet the crowd, then climbed onto a small concrete block in front of the market. My dear citizens, he called out, his voice strong and clear. Today I came to shop just like you. I wanted to see firsthand the problems you face. And I've seen that the increase in basic food prices has reached unacceptable levels. Jean Mercier lost his job after returning to France. Affirming sounds rose from the crowd. We can't feed our children, called out a woman. We can't afford our medications, added another. School expenses have also risen too much, shouted a young father. Traoré raised his hand for silence. I hear your cries. I see your problems. And I promise you, we will change the situation. Starting today, an emergency economic action plan will go into effect. After the meeting, a young journalist approached Traoré. Mr. President, were you really going to publish those documents in Geneva? The crowd began to applaud excitedly. As a first step, Traoré continued, we are temporarily removing all taxes on basic food items. The second step will be support packages for our farmers to strengthen local production. The third step will be strict measures against those artificially raising prices. What matters is the outcome. The crowd was cheering wildly. An elderly man stepped forward and took Traoré's hand. Mr. President, we believe in you because you are here with us, on the street. Previous leaders only saw us through television. Always remember that. Traoré firmly held the old man's hand. I will always be among my people. A leader who lives behind palace walls can never see the real problems of his people. 6 months later, the Financial Times in London ran the headline, The New Order for Africa's Natural Resources, Western Companies Must Adapt. A young woman beside him boldly asked, Mr. President, how will we track whether your promises are fulfilled? That same day, an unexpected visitor came to Ibrahim Traoré's office. Traoré smiled. You're absolutely right. Your leaders promise, then forget. But I will be different. 1 month from now, on this exact day, at this time, I will come back to this market. And together we will look at the prices. If there's change, we'll all see it. If there's no change, you will hold me accountable. To them, I'm a traitor, said Zongo. The crowd applauded. We'll be here in a month. Someone shouted. As Traoré finished speaking, Two small children ran toward him from the crowd. One of them, a girl about 8 years old, approached shyly. "Mr. President, I have a question for you," she said in a trembling voice. Traoré bent down to the child's eye level. "Of course, I'm listening, young lady. And we are ready to cooperate with the entire world on equal terms. Why don't you wear expensive clothes and ride in big cars like other grown-ups?" the child asked with innocent curiosity. The crowd fell silent. Traoré smiled. "Because the money spent on those expensive clothes and big cars should be spent on the education and health of children like you. If a leader lives in luxury while his people suffer poverty, he is not a true leader." "Thank you, Mr. Secretary General," said Traoré. A smile appeared on the child's face. Everyone around was moved. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Traoré patted the child's head and began walking away through the crowd. People touched him, greeted him, some said prayers. That evening, Burkina Faso television broadcast the news with the headline, "President at the Supermarket." Social media was flooded with thousands of shares using the hashtag #PeoplesPresident. International media also picked up the story, publishing articles with headlines like, "New Style of Leadership in Africa." Officials at the presidential palace panicked when they heard the news. Security Chief Paul Zita alerted all security units via radio. "Where is the president? Why did he leave without notice?" he asked angrily. In the presidential office, Traoré's chief of staff Marie Cohn's face had gone pale as she hung up the phone. "The president is at Nafa Naana supermarket," she said in amazement. "He went shopping alone. His shopping basket contained basic groceries, a bottle of water, and pharmacy items." Security teams quickly mobilized, but following direct orders from Traoré, none of them approached the market. "The president wants to be alone with his people," Colonel Zongo told all units over the radio. "There will be no intervention." Noticing how carefully he examined the prices and found some items very expensive, Sophie commented, "Everything has become so expensive, hasn't it?" This directive worried the security team. Major Diallo objected, "But Colonel, this is against security protocol. The president's safety. The president is here." Colonel Zongo cut him off. "The president said, 'There is no safer place than among my people. We will follow his order.'" Within minutes, a crowd began to form outside the Nafa Naana supermarket. 2 hours later, when Traoré returned to the palace, Security Chief Paul Zita met him at the door, concern on his face. "Mr. President, such unannounced outings are very dangerous for your safety. Please, next time without planning. We could have prepared." Traoré raised his hand to stop him. "I understand your concern, Paul, but I will not be a leader disconnected from my people. If we need to take some risks, we will. If one day I am assassinated, know that it will be a death worthy of my people. But I would rather spend one day freely among my people than live like a slave, hiding behind palace walls." Meanwhile, Sophie was still at the checkout, stunned. Zita bowed his head. There was something different about this young man compared to other leaders he had known. A genuine belief, a sincere determination. When he entered the palace, cabinet members were waiting for an emergency meeting. Economy Minister Laurent Sanon examined the shopping list and notebook notes Traoré had brought with astonishment. "Mr. President, the price increases in your notes are truly alarming. Especially powdered milk and baby formula. I will immediately launch an investigation. I don't know the exact reason, but people say import taxes have increased." Traoré took his place at the head of the table. "I will never forget what I saw today. The high prices of basic food items are unacceptable. Prepare a decree on this matter for tomorrow morning. We are temporarily removing all taxes on imported powdered milk and baby formula. Some nights my children go to bed hungry." Agriculture Minister Florence Ouedraogo spoke up. "This could be a temporary solution, Mr. President. But in the long term, we need to increase our own production." "What else?" Traoré nodded. "Correct. The next step will be to start a program to promote local milk production. Special support should be given to farmers in the south. My pension doesn't even cover my medications anymore." "What will be the cost?" asked Finance Minister Pierre Ilbudo. "Our budget is all ready. How are our people coping with this situation?" Traoré lightly pounded the table. "If we can't find money in the budget, we'll cut from luxury expenditures. We will sell the luxury vehicles at the presidential palace. We will reduce ministers' privileges. We will limit foreign trips. But we will not let our people go hungry." Ibrahim Traoré smiled slightly. The ministers looked at each other in surprise. This was a leadership style they weren't accustomed to. But seeing the determination in Traoré's eyes, no one could object. The meeting continued late into the night. Seeing Traoré's determination, the ministers quickly began preparing action plans. The next morning, Burkina Faso radio made an important announcement. by order of President Traoré, all taxes on baby formula and powdered milk have been immediately eliminated. Additionally, a new program to support local milk production has been launched. Traoré completed his purchase at Sophie's checkout and paid in cash. That same afternoon, 15 luxury vehicles from the presidential palace were put up for sale by Traoré's order. Revenue from the sale of these vehicles will be used to support milk producers in the villages, the presidential spokesperson announced. French Ambassador Claude Dubois immediately requested a meeting. When he met with Traoré at the palace, there was concern on his face. "Mr. President, these sudden decisions, especially those related to import taxes, they could affect international agreements." When the doors opened, hundreds of people greeted him with applause. Traoré calmly replied, "Mr. Ambassador, when the children of my people are hungry, international agreements take second place. But don't worry, this is a temporary measure. In the long term, we will increase our own production and reduce our dependence on imports." "My dear citizens," he called out, his voice strong and clear. Dubois tried to object, but he retreated in the face of Traoré's determined attitude. In his report to Paris after the meeting, he wrote, "The new president is different from other African leaders. He seems immune to classic diplomatic pressures and has the support of his people behind him." Jean Mercier lost his job after returning to France. This news was greeted with joy throughout the country. At the Nafa Naana supermarket, Sophie and the other employees looked at each other and smiled. "He's really doing what he said," Sophie remarked proudly. 2 days later, Sophie's phone rang. The caller was from the presidential palace. "Ms. Sophie Kabor? President Traoré would like to meet with you." Traoré raised his hand for silence. Sophie was shocked. The next day, with trembling legs, she went to the presidential palace. It wasn't as luxurious a place as she had expected. It was simple, functional, far from ostentatious. Traoré greeted her in his office. "Sophie, please come in. Have a seat. The second step will be support packages for our farmers to strengthen local production." Sophie sat down nervously. "Mr. President, I don't know why you called me." The crowd was cheering wildly. An elderly man stepped forward and took Traoré's hand. "I have a proposition for you. I want to hear and see the real problems of my people. I need honest, sincere people like you. We're establishing a new unit in the Ministry of Economy, the Department of Consumer Rights and Price Monitoring. I want you to head this unit. A leader who lives behind palace walls can never see the real problems of his people." Sophie's mouth fell open. "Me? But I'm just a cashier. I don't even have economics training." "You're absolutely right." Traoré laughed. "The best economics education is living among the people. You talk to hundreds of people every day and see the prices of thousands of products. That's more valuable than theoretical knowledge. If there's change, we'll all see it." Sophie couldn't hold back her tears. "Mr. President, I will make the most of this opportunity. I will work for our people. We'll be here in a month." A week later, Traoré returned to the Nafa Naana supermarket, this time with members of the press. He checked the price tags and smiled. The prices of powdered milk and baby formula had decreased by almost 40%. When he saw the new head of the Department of Consumer Rights and Price Monitoring, Sophie, he approached her. "As you can see, I kept my word. This is just the beginning. And we are ready to cooperate with the entire world on equal terms." This visit changed Traoré's leadership style. Now he began making unannounced visits to markets, hospitals, and schools in different regions every month. Each time he carried his notebook, seeing problems firsthand and producing solutions. 3 months later, the Ministry of Economy announced the first results. The increase in basic food prices had stopped, infant mortality rates had begun to decline. Hundreds of farmers had applied to the local milk production program. The former supermarket manager Marcel Ouedraogo was now working as a consultant at the Ministry of Agriculture. "The president's visit changed my life," he said in an interview. "Now I can do more for my country." Everyone around was moved. 6 months later, Traoré kept his promise and went to the Nafa Naana supermarket again. This time, a large crowd was waiting for him. People were chanting, "A leader who keeps his word." That evening, Burkina Faso television broadcast the news with the headline, "President at the Supermarket." A special stand had been set up in the supermarket. Called the Local Production Corner, this stand displayed milk products, honey, and fruit juices produced by Burkina Faso farmers. The prices were much more affordable than imported products. In his speech that day, Traoré said, "This is just a beginning. Our goal is to make Burkina Faso a self-sufficient country. We should be able to feed our own people without depending on others' products." Why did he leave without notice? In a television interview, Traoré said, "Leadership requires walking in your people's shoes. If you don't experience what they experience, you cannot make the right decisions for them. They chanted. The Nafa Naana supermarket had now become a historic site. Tourists from all over the world visited it, taking photos at the place known as the market where the president shopped. "When I grow up, I want to be like you," said the child. For Sophie, life had completely changed. The young woman who was once a cashier now had a say in her country's economic policies. A photo of her with President Traoré hung on her office wall. Under the photo was a note written in Traoré's handwriting: "Sometimes being an ordinary citizen is the best leadership lesson. Because each of us is here to build Africa's future." This story was told among the Burkina Faso people from person to person, leading to Traoré being called the supermarket president among the people. This was used not as an insult but as a compliment, for a leader who was among his people, who saw their problems firsthand and solved them. A year later, Traoré gave a speech at an international economic forum. Other African leaders, Western diplomats, and businesspeople listened to him. "Leadership is learned not from palaces, but from streets," said Traoré. "Without mingling with your people, you cannot understand their real problems. And how will you solve a problem you don't understand?" This speech deeply affected other African leaders. From Mali to Ghana, from Niger to Kenya, many leaders began to follow Traoré's approach. Mingling with the people, seeing their problems firsthand became the new standard for African leadership. This movement was called the Traoré model. A year after Traoré's supermarket visit, a special session was held at the African Union. The topic: the importance of direct contact with people in African leadership. Traoré was invited to give the opening speech. "African leaders, as we became disconnected from our people, we lost our independence," said Traoré, looking at the other heads of state. "While living behind the high walls of palaces, colonizers stole our resources. While looking through the tinted windows of our luxury cars, our children died of hunger. Enough. We must draw our power from our people, not from colonial powers." Following this meeting, a new approach called supermarket diplomacy was born. Leaders of Mali, Niger, Ghana, Somalia, Congo, and Kenya, following Traoré's example, began making unannounced visits to the people. Each visit was transformed into a concrete reform. However, this movement began to disturb Western powers. Because African leaders directly producing solutions to their people's problems left no room for external interventions. The French Ministry of Foreign Affairs had prepared a report, Changing Leadership Dynamics in Africa and Their Effects on French Interests. The report stated, leaders adopting the Traoré model are becoming resistant to traditional diplomatic pressures. This situation threatens our interests in Africa. For Sophie Kabor, life had completely changed. She was no longer a simple cashier, but an important figure with a say in her country's economic policies. Her story had inspired all young people with low education levels. "Not having a diploma doesn't mean I'm nothing," she said in an interview. "President Traoré showed me that experience gained in the field can be more valuable than theories taught in classrooms." Under Sophie's leadership, the Department of Consumer Rights and Price Monitoring opened more than 50 branches across the country. At each branch, citizens could report price increases and unfair practices. Sophie also developed the Price Monitoring app, a mobile application where citizens could track product prices, compare them, and report problems from their phones. This application played a major role in preventing excessive price increases. Consumers could compare prices from market to market. Companies detected with excessive price increases were quickly reported to the relevant units. Marcel Ouedraogo, in his position at the Ministry of Agriculture, launched the Village to Market program. This program allowed farmers to sell their products directly to supermarkets, eliminating intermediaries. The program provided farmers with a fair income and allowed consumers to access fresh food at a lower cost. Traoré's supermarket visit also led to an unexpected diplomatic crisis. France tried to pressure Burkina Faso by suspending some international trade agreements, citing the government's unpredictable economic policies. However, Traoré was quick to respond. In a speech on national television, he said, "They want us to choose hunger. They want our children to go hungry. But we will not bow down. Africa's future is now in the hands of African peoples." The people stood by Traoré. In fact, in response to France's sanctions, citizens voluntarily started saving campaigns, and production cooperatives were established. Burkina Faso began to become economically self-sufficient. 2 years later, Burkina Faso's economic indicators surprised world banks. Inflation in basic food prices had been brought under control, local production had increased, and infant mortality rates had decreased by 30%. The story that began at the Nafa Naana supermarket was now being taught as a case study in international economics classes. An article titled "The Traoré Effect: Leadership from Among the People and Economic Transformation" was published in prestigious journals. Sophie Kabor was invited as a speaker to the Sustainable Development Goals meeting held in New York as Burkina Faso's UN representative. In her speech, she said, "My story shows Africa's potential. We just need equal opportunity. The rest follows." As for Traoré, he continued the tradition of visiting a different market on the last Thursday of each month. On these visits, he carried his notebook, pen, and ears that listened to his people's problems. Nafa Naana supermarket had become a kind of national monument. There was a plaque at the entrance that read, "Change started here." Sophie's checkout was preserved in a glass display case. Tourist groups from abroad, especially young leaders from other African countries, visited this market. Marcel Ouedraogo sometimes came here to tell about that special day. Everything started with a simple question from a cashier: "Everything has become so expensive, hasn't it? Salaries aren't enough." In his 5th year, Ibrahim Traoré gave a national speech. 5 years ago, at the Nafa Naana supermarket, I saw the real life of my people. That day, I received the most important lesson of my life. A leader cannot be a true leader without understanding the daily struggle of his people. 10 years after this event, a special exhibition was opened at the Nafa Naana supermarket, a country changed by a shopping trip. The exhibition comparatively displayed the prices of products Traoré bought that day and the prices 10 years later. Powdered milk, which was 5,000 CFA 10 years ago, had now decreased to 2,000 CFA thanks to local production. In Burkina Faso, the first Thursday of April each year began to be celebrated as Voice of the People Day. On this day, all administrators, ministers, and government officials were required to visit public places and listen to citizens. The shopping list Traoré bought from the supermarket that day hung framed in the ministry building. The list was a daily reminder to all civil servants: don't forget the real problems of the people. At the end of his term, Traoré calmly handed over his seat to his elected successor, Amadou Diallo. At the swearing-in ceremony, Diallo said, "The most valuable lesson Traoré taught us was to govern from among the people. I will continue this tradition." After completing his duty, Ibrahim Traoré returned to his hometown, a small village. He began living in a simple house. However, he continued the tradition of going to that legendary supermarket to shop every first Thursday of April each year. On each visit, the cashier would ask him, "How do you find the prices, Mr. Traoré?" And the former president would give the same answer each time: "Better every day. Because now we are moving forward on our own path." As for Sophie Kabor, after retiring, she founded a non-governmental organization, Price Watchers. This organization continued to monitor, report, and inform the public about the prices of basic consumer goods across the country. Marcel Ouedraogo served as the African representative in an international agricultural organization. He spread sustainable agricultural practices worldwide by explaining the village-to-market model. Burkina Faso's story inspired many countries in Africa. Similar examples spread from Mali to Congo, from Senegal to Kenya. The leadership from among the people model became Africa's new governance paradigm. And this change had begun on an ordinary Thursday, in an ordinary supermarket, when an ordinary-looking man truly listened to his people. Ibrahim Traoré's story remained a symbol of hope for Africa's future. It was told in streets, schools, and universities. True leaders come from among the people and stay among the people. Eventually, this story spread all over the world. An ordinary shopping trip by a leader to understand the daily problems of his people had turned into a major step that changed a country's destiny. Now there is a sign at the Nafa Naana supermarket for visitors to see. Sometimes great changes begin at the most unexpected moments, in the most ordinary places. All that's needed is an ear ready to listen and a heart determined to act.